April 14th, 1945. 1400 hours, Ebbendorf, Germany. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter of Sturm Mercer Company 1002 stared at the massive weapon he had been ordered to abandon. The 38-centimeter Raketenwerfer barrel protruded from the coal mine shaft entrance like the mouth of some industrial beast. Behind him, his crew had already fled. The Americans were coming, artillery fire growing closer with each minute. Richter placed his hand on the cold steel of the Tiger chassis, feeling the weight of 68 tons beneath his palm. 14 rockets remained inside, each weighing 761 pounds. Enough explosive power to level a city block with a single shot. He should destroy it. Wehrmacht protocol demanded it. But the demolition charges were back at the abandoned command post, and the Americans were already in the village. Richter made his choice. He ran. What Obergefreiter Richter didn't know was that within 3 hours, American engineers from the advancing 9th Army would photograph every centimeter of his abandoned Sturmtiger. They would measure its dimensions, document its ammunition, test its systems, and ultimately ship it across the Atlantic Ocean to Maryland. The weapon Adolf Hitler had personally demanded for the defense of the Reich, the terror weapon designed to stop American advances in their tracks, would spend the next 40 years in American hands, not as a trophy of war, but as a lesson in what happens when desperation masquerades as innovation. The Sturmtiger represented the culmination of German military philosophy, taken to its logical extreme. After the nightmare of Stalingrad in the winter of 1942, where German forces had watched conventional weapons fail against fortified urban positions, Wehrmacht commanders recognized the need for something revolutionary. The Sturminfanterieschutz 33B had proven inadequate. The Brummbär, mounting a 15-centimeter gun on a Panzer IV chassis, offered improvement but remained vulnerable to increasingly effective Allied anti-tank weapons. What Germany needed, the planners decided, was a weapon so powerful, so heavily armored, so devastating in its effect that a single shot could change the dynamics of urban warfare. The solution emerged from an unlikely source. The Kriegsmarine possessed a 38-centimeter rocket launcher, originally designed as a depth-charge weapon for coastal defense against submarines. Rheinmetall and Borsig had developed this weapon for naval use, never imagining it would end up mounted on a tank chassis. But in the desperate calculus of 1943, such unconventional thinking seemed inspired rather than absurd. On October 20th, 1943, Adolf Hitler watched the prototype demonstration at the Ares military training ground. The test firing obliterated a reinforced concrete bunker with a single rocket. Hitler, still believing in technological solutions to strategic impossibilities, saw his war-winning weapon. He imagined these Sturmtigers smashing through Allied defences, reducing fortified positions to rubble, terrorizing enemy forces with their devastating firepower. 6 months later, on April 19th, 1944, he formally ordered production. 12 vehicles initially, with plans for 300 rounds of ammunition per month. The mathematics seemed straightforward. Each Sturmtiger would carry 14 rounds internally. With steady resupply, these weapons would devastate any opposition. The engineering challenges were immense. The only chassis capable of supporting a 38-centimeter rocket launcher was the Tiger one, already weighing 57 tons. Adding the massive weapon system, the reinforced superstructure, and the 15-centimeter frontal armor pushed the total weight to 68 tons. The rocket projectile itself represented a marvel of destructive engineering. Each round measured 56.68 inches in length and 14.94 inches in diameter. The high-explosive body contained 270 pounds of German explosive charge, number 13, amatol, 50-50 mixture poured into the shell casing. The motor body held 88.5 pounds of rocket propellant, arranged in complex configurations. One center stick, weighing 10 pounds. One intermediate stick of 20 pounds, and 10 outer sticks totaling 56 pounds. 32 Venturi holes in the nozzle plate, angled at 14 degrees to impart spin stabilization, would exhaust the rocket gases and propel the massive projectile toward its target. The loading procedure revealed the weapon's fundamental flaw, though German engineers rationalized it as acceptable complexity. Loading a single round required the entire five-man crew. First, they would use the external crane mounted on the rear of the superstructure to lift the 761-pound projectile. The commander would guide it toward the breach while the gunner ensured proper alignment. The loader, radio operator, and driver would operate the crane and stabilize the massive rocket as it entered the barrel. The loading process, even with experienced crews under ideal conditions, required 5 to 7 minutes. Then came the ignition system preparation, installing the igniter primer in the nozzle assembly plate, checking the relay bags in the center stick, confirming the half-pound ignition charge attachment to the forward spacer ring. Only then could the weapon fire. American soldiers entering Eppendorf that April afternoon had no context for what they had discovered. Sergeant Robert Mitchell of the 30th Infantry Division had seen plenty of German armor. He had fought Tigers and Panthers, respected their engineering while learning to exploit their vulnerabilities. But this vehicle defied categorization. The barrel alone measured large enough to fit a man inside. Mitchell would later tell army historians that his first thought was that the Germans had mounted some kind of naval gun on a tank chassis. The identification markings, Sturm Company 1002, meant nothing to him. He radioed his company commander, describing what he was seeing in terms that sounded absurd even as he spoke them. Within hours, intelligence officers arrived. Within days, technical experts from Army Ordnance were examining every detail. Within weeks, the decision was made. This vehicle would go to Aberdeen Proving Ground. But the Eppendorf Sturmtiger was not alone. As American forces swept through collapsing German defenses in April 1945, they encountered these weapons repeatedly. Near Oberempt in February, another Sturmtiger had been disabled by its crew but not destroyed. American engineers photographed it extensively, documenting 44 pages of technical details after repairing it to running condition. At Hutsmert in April, they captured another being transported to the rail yards. The Brumby Sturmtiger became the only one photographed in color during wartime, an almost cheerful image of American soldiers posing with their massive prize. Near Menden, another fell into American hands at the point of disablement. The Frontenhausen vehicle had fallen from a bridge into a river, recovered like some industrial Excalibur. Each capture added to the mounting intelligence picture. These were not isolated prototypes or experimental vehicles. Germany had actually built these weapons in numbers, deployed them to combat units, and expected them to affect the war's outcome. The mathematics of production told a story German commanders had refused to acknowledge. Total Sturmtiger production, 18 vehicles. Total ammunition manufactured, 317 rounds. Compare these numbers to American Sherman production. 49,234 tanks built between 1942 and 1945. At peak production, American factories completed one Sherman tank every 5 minutes. The Willow Run plant in Michigan alone produced one B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes. While Germany was adapting naval weapons to tank chassis and building 18 vehicles over 15 months, America was producing tanks, aircraft, trucks, and weapons in quantities that made individual German super weapons mathematically irrelevant. The Sturmtiger's combat record demonstrated this irrelevance with brutal clarity. First deployment came in August 1944 during the Warsaw Uprising. 3 vehicles, including the prototype, with factory workers serving as crew because no trained operators existed, arrived to suppress the insurgency. In the urban environment for which the weapon was specifically designed, it performed as intended. Buildings dissolved under 345-kilogram rocket impacts. Insurgent positions evaporated. German commanders filed enthusiastic reports. The Sturmtiger worked. Then came the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, and reality imposed itself. Sturm-Mercer-Kompanien 1000, 1001, and 1002 were deployed with approximately 14 vehicles total between them. The Ardennes terrain, heavily forested and mountainous, was exactly wrong for a 68-ton vehicle designed for urban warfare. Some Sturmtigers broke down before reaching combat. Others arrived but found their massive firepower useless in forest fighting. The slow rate of fire, 1 round every 5 to 7 minutes, made them vulnerable in any engagement. Their specialized ammunition meant limited flexibility. A Sherman tank crew could engage infantry, armor, or structures as needed. A Sturmtiger crew had 14 chances to destroy fortified positions, and then their 68-ton vehicle became the world's most expensive pillbox. The sole recorded success against armor demonstrated the weapon's limitations rather than its capabilities. In January 1945, near Düren and Euskirchen, a Sturmtiger from Company 1001 fired a single round at American Sherman tanks in a village. 3 Shermans were destroyed with that one shot. German crews celebrated. Reports were filed citing the Sturmtiger's effectiveness as a tank killer. But the context revealed a different story. The Shermans were stationary, possibly parked, crews likely taking a rest break. The targets were unaware and immobile. Against moving armor, the Sturmtiger's slow projectile velocity of 250 meters per second, its lengthy reload time, and its limited ammunition made it nearly useless. This engagement, the only recorded instance of Sturmtiger versus tank combat, worked only because the enemy wasn't fighting back. Shortly after this success, Company 1001 faced the fundamental problem every Sturmtiger unit eventually encountered. They ran out of ammunition. 14 rounds, carefully rationed, disappeared in combat faster than crews expected. Resupply proved impossible. The single ammunition carrier vehicle built for the 18 combat Sturmtigers could not support even one full company. Wehrmacht logistics, already collapsing under Allied pressure, could not deliver 345-kilogram rockets to forward units. The mathematics were inescapable. After firing 14 rounds, a Sturmtiger became a 68-ton liability, too slow to retreat effectively, too heavy to cross damaged bridges, too conspicuous to hide, too valuable to simply abandon. Many crews chose surrender over destruction. At Remagen, in March 1945, German forces desperately tried to use Sturmtigers against the captured bridge. 7 vehicles from Kompanien 1000 and 1001 participated. The weapon proved too inaccurate for precision targeting of the bridge structure. After firing their ammunition in support of ground forces, the units ferried across the Rhine and expended their final rounds. Then, faced with American forces on all sides and no ammunition remaining, crews surrendered en masse. Some destroyed their vehicles first. Others simply walked away, as Obergefreiter Richter had done at Eppendorf. The intelligence windfall for American forces was extraordinary. ETO Technical Intelligence Report number 184, filed on March 23, 1945, provided the first comprehensive analysis. Report number 184A added supplemental details. Report number 192 focused specifically on the 38-centimeter R, SPAR-GR, 4,581 rocket projectile, Major HL, Cache of the Enemy Equipment Intelligence Section, Ordnance Service, Headquarters Communications Zone, ETO USA, documented every specification. The projectile's sensitivity to temperature, the charge-weight ratio of 73%, excluding the motor body, 35.5% overall. The complex propellant ignition system, with its igniter primer, 3-bag powder relay, and half-pound ignition charge. The point-detonating percussion fuse with its choice of instantaneous or short delay settings. American engineers learned that the weapon was painted olive drab with a 0.8-inch white band at the center of gravity. That stenciled warnings in German advised crews. Warning: sensitive to damp, protect from rain and water. Even the ammunition required careful handling. Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland became the final destination for chassis number 250,174, the Eppendorf Sturmtiger. Through the summer of 1945, while Germany lay in ruins and the war's European chapter closed, American ordnance experts systematically tested Hitler's terror weapon. They fired the rockets, measured the recoil, timed the loading procedures, evaluated the armor, assessed the mobility. Their conclusions appeared in classified reports that would guide American tank doctrine for decades. The verdict was damning. Yes, the firepower was impressive. Yes, the armor was substantial. Yes, the weapon could achieve devastating effects against fortified structures. But the practical utility was nearly zero. The loading procedure was absurdly complex. The ammunition capacity was laughably small. The rate of fire was unacceptable. The specialization made the weapon useless in 99% of combat situations. The weight created mobility problems. The requirement for a dedicated ammunition carrier, of which only one was built, made sustained operations impossible. Most critically, the resource allocation was insane. The steel, labor, and manufacturing capacity required to produce 18 Sturmtigers could have built 200 Panzer IV tanks or 150 Panthers. The 317 rounds manufactured could have been 30,000 conventional tank shells. American engineers recognized what German commanders had refused to admit. The Sturmtiger represented the triumph of desperation over doctrine. It was a weapon built not because strategic thinking demanded it, but because Hitler wanted it, because German engineers could build it. Because someone thought that spectacular firepower could compensate for systematic strategic failure. The Americans filed their reports with a single clear recommendation: never build anything like this. American doctrine favored mobile, reliable, easily supplied weapons that could adapt to multiple situations. A Sherman tank might not match a Tiger in direct combat, but Shermans could be produced in overwhelming numbers, repaired in field conditions, supplied from secure logistics networks, and operated by crews with weeks rather than months of training. The Sturmtiger's journey continued long after the war ended. Aberdeen kept chassis 250,174 as part of its foreign equipment collection. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, it sat in outdoor storage, a curiosity for visiting officers and ordnance students. This is what the Germans thought would win the war, became the standard explanation. Weather took its toll on the vehicle. Paint faded. Seals deteriorated. The mechanical systems froze, but the Sturmtiger remained, a silent testament to military miscalculation. In 1981, the United States returned the vehicle to Germany. Not as a military threat, but as a museum piece. It went first to the Bundeswehr test site at Meppen, then to the Army repair plant in St. Wendel for refurbishment. From there to the Wehrtechnische Studiensammlung in Koblenz, where it was displayed until 1996. A brief loan to the Technology Museum in Sinsheim preceded its final home at the Deutsches Panzermuseum in Munster in 2003. Today it stands as one of only 2 surviving Sturmtigers worldwide, the other residing in the Kubinka Tank Museum in Russia after Soviet capture. The British kept only the 38-centimetre Raketen-Werfer weapon itself, now displayed at the Tank Museum in Bovington. Modern museum plaques tell the complete story. Chassis number 250,174, built in 1944. Deployed to Sturm Company 1002, abandoned at Eppendorf, April 1945. Captured by United States 9th Army. tested at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Held in American custody for 36 years, returned to Germany 1981. The placard does not say terror weapon or super weapon. It describes the Sturmtiger as an example of late-war German desperation, a vehicle that demonstrated both impressive engineering capability and complete strategic misunderstanding. German veterans who served in the Sturm units rarely spoke proudly of their service. Post-war reunions and oral history projects revealed a different perspective than official wartime reports suggested. Crew members described the constant anxiety of limited ammunition, the frustration of mechanical breakdowns, the recognition, even during the war, that their powerful weapon could not affect the outcome. One former commander, interviewed in 1978, stated simply, "We had a weapon that could destroy a building with one shot, but America had 1,000 buildings, and we had 14 shots. The mathematics were very clear, even to us." Documents discovered in German archives after reunification provided additional context. Intelligence reports from January 1945 showed Wehrmacht analysts attempting to calculate Sturmtiger effectiveness. Their conclusions, written weeks before Germany's final collapse, acknowledged what Hitler refused to accept. 18 vehicles, even with perfect employment and unlimited ammunition, could not alter strategic realities. The reports noted that American tank production exceeded total German armoured vehicle production by factors of 10 or more, that Allied air superiority made daytime movements suicidal regardless of how heavily armoured the vehicle was, that the Sturmtiger's specialised role meant it could only be used in specific situations that were becoming increasingly rare as Germany retreated. These reports never reached Hitler. They were filed away, discovered decades later by historians documenting the war's final months. The captured Sturmtigers became teaching tools. At the United States Army Armor School at Fort Knox, instructors used photographs and intelligence reports to illustrate doctrinal principles. This is what happens, the lessons explained, when you prioritize individual weapon superiority over systematic capability. The Sturmtiger could destroy more with a single shot than a Sherman's 75mm gun. But the Sherman could fire 4 to 6 rounds per minute, carried 90 to 97 rounds total, could be easily resupplied, required simple maintenance, and cost a fraction of the Sturmtiger to produce. Warfare was not about spectacular individual weapons. It was about sustainable systems of production, logistics, training, and employment. American armor doctrine of the Cold War period reflected these lessons. The M60 tank, developed in the 1960s, and later the Mohn Abrams prioritized reliability, ease of maintenance, strategic mobility, and sustainable production over pure firepower or armor thickness. American planners had learned from both their own wartime experience and from studying German mistakes. The military that could put more capable tanks in more places more reliably would win, regardless of whether individual enemy vehicles were more powerful. By the time chassis 250,174 returned to Germany in 1981, no one pretended it represented a missed opportunity or a war-winning weapon. The Germans displayed it as Americans had, a cautionary example. Museum visitors, many of them young Germans with no memory of the war, asked practical questions. How many were built? 18. How effective were they? Marginally, in specific situations. Why did Germany build them? Because leadership demanded technological solutions to strategic problems. What happened to them? Most were captured intact by Allied forces, suggesting even German crews recognized their limited value. The final irony emerged in the care with which Americans preserved these weapons. While German infrastructure crumbled and records were lost, while veterans scattered and memories faded, the United States maintained detailed documentation of every captured Sturmtiger. The photographs, technical reports, intelligence assessments, and test results remained in climate-controlled archives. When Germany wanted to restore chassis 250,174 for museum display, American records provided the specifications. The terror weapon that was supposed to stop American advances ended up depending on American record-keeping for its historical survival. Today, tourists photograph the Sturmtiger at Munster without fully comprehending what they are seeing. Children marvel at its size. Military historians examine its technical features, but the vehicle's true significance lies not in what it was, but in what it represents. The moment when German military philosophy, brilliant in 1939, became completely disconnected from reality by 1944. When the nation that had pioneered combined arms warfare and mobile operations convinced itself that individual superweapons could defeat systematic superiority. When desperation was mistaken for innovation, Obergefreiter Klaus Richter survived the war. He was captured by American forces 2 days after abandoning his Sturmtiger at Eppendorf, processed through a POW camp, and returned to Germany in 1946. In 1983, he visited the Deutsches Panzermuseum and saw his vehicle, chassis 250,174, on display. A museum staff member, recognizing his unit insignia on the veteran's jacket, asked if he wanted to share his memories. Richter stood silent for several minutes, looking at the massive weapon he had abandoned 38 years earlier. Finally, he spoke. "I thought this would stop them. We all did. We thought 14 rockets would be enough, that German engineering would make the difference, that one of these was worth 10 of their Shermans." He paused, touching the cold steel one final time. "Then I saw their tanks, and their trucks, and their planes, and I understood. They didn't need better weapons. They had more weapons. They had more of everything. This," he gestured at the Sturmtiger, "this was just another waste of steel that could have built something useful." The weapon designed to terrorize America sits peacefully in a German museum, preserved by American documentation, studied by international historians, photographed by countless visitors. The barrel that once launched 345-kilogram rockets capable of leveling buildings now points at nothing. The vehicle that required 5 men and a crane to load a single round stands silent and empty. The terror weapon that Adolf Hitler personally demanded became a lesson in the mathematics of warfare. 18 cannot defeat 49,234. Spectacular cannot defeat sustainable. Desperation cannot defeat production. The Sturmtiger that Obergefreiter Richter abandoned in April 1945, the weapon that American soldiers discovered hiding in a coal mine shaft, stands today as a monument not to German engineering prowess, but to the fundamental truth that wars are won not by superweapons, but by systems. And in the mathematics of industrial warfare, America's system made German desperation irrelevant.